Alright guys, so today we're going to learn how to simplify equations using the quadratic formula. We're going to learn a little bit more about that next week, but we're just going to practice simplifying because it can kind of get crazy. So I've listed the steps up there for you, but I'm going to walk you through it. So in our first example, we noticed this square root of 36, and I know that 36 is going to be a perfect square, so I can go ahead and easily simplify that to be 7 plus or minus 6. Then I'm going to rewrite everything that is on the bottom. So now, back to yesterday, I need two answers, and I'm going to solve it one way with the plus and one way with the minus. So I will have one as 7 plus 6 over 2. So then I'm going to solve that. I know 7 plus 6 is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 over 2. And we can go ahead and leave that as a simplified answer. So that's one way with the plus, and then down here I'm going to do it with the minus. And I know 7 minus 6 is a 1 over 2, and that's my answer. So my solutions would be a 13 over 2 and a 1/2. Okay? You can raise your hand and ask me questions if you have them now. Next page, though. We've got some more crazier ones. You've got the square root of 48, which is not a perfect square, but I can break it down. So over here, I'm going to break down 48 2 times, I need a calculator, 2 times 24. I know 24 would break down into 4 times 6. Bring down that 2. 4 will break down into 2 times 2, bring down this 2, and 6 is 3 times 2. So this is everything under my radical. I'm going to find some pair of 2's, take it out and write it once. I also have another pair of 2's, take them out and write it once, and I'm left with the square root of 3 under your radical. So that final answer is 4 roots 3. So this was just the same as a 48. So what I'm going to do is put it where I saw 48 to begin with. So over here, my problem is now 4 plus or minus the 2 root, or 4 root 3. It's going to come up there. All over 6. Okay? So all I did was I took this square root of 48, I broke it down into a number that I now know that is simplified, and I put it back on top right where it went. So the last part is you need to simplify, and you can simplify this fraction over this fraction and this fraction over this fraction, because 4 will go into 6. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to divide each of them by 2, because I know they're divisible by 2. And a 4 divided by a 2 is a 2, plus or minus 2 root 3, and then 6 divided by 2 is a 3. So I know this is my final answer because I know that 2/3 is a reduced fraction and this 2/3 is a reduced fraction. Alright, let's look at this one down here. So I have a bunch of numbers under my square root. So the first thing I need to do is simplify this right here. So in your calculator, you are going to type this in. So you're going to do 144 minus 48. And I got 96. So this is going to be negative 12 plus or minus square root 96 all over 6. So I'm back to the first problem that we just did. I need to simplify this term right here. So I'm going to do that to the side, right below it. So square root of 96. I know it's divisible by 2. So 2 times 48. I know 48 is 6 times 8. And this is a 2. 6 will break down into 3 times 2. Bring down that 2. 8 is 4 times 2, and then that 4 is 2 times 2. So I'm just going to bring down all of my terms. That's everything under the radical. Okay. So now I've got a pair of 2's. So I'll take them out and write it once. I have another pair of 2's. Take it out and write it once. And then these 2 3's, I can't take them out. So I'll just have 2 times 3 in the middle, which is a 6. So that final answer is 4 root 6. And so that is the same as the square root of 96. So I'm going to go back up here and replace that with it. So instead of 96, I have 4 root 6 over 6. So now I can reduce these fractions. I know they're all divisible by a 2, so let me divide them by a 2. Now you don't divide the square root. That just kind of stays there. So negative 12 divided by 2 is a negative 6. Plus or minus 4 divided by 2 is a 2. Square root of a 6. All over 6 divided by 2 is a 3. And so I know these could be divided, but since 2/3 is a reduced fraction, then I can go ahead and stop there. And that would be my answer. Okay? On the next page, which is your back page, this is what the quadratic formula is going to look like. Tons of numbers, lots of multiplication that you have to do. So the first thing you're going to do is type this top part into your calculator with the parentheses and all. So let me go get a calculator. So we're going to type parentheses negative 11 squared minus 4 times 3 times 10. And I got 1. So what that means, now the number under my square root is a 1. Okay? So I'm going to rewrite this problem. Negative parenthesis, negative 11 plus or minus, I know this is going to be a 6. So the next thing I can do, I know that 2 negatives are going to make a positive, so that becomes a positive 11. I know the square root of a 1 is just a 1, so it's going to be plus or minus 1. And then I just drag that 6 over and have it this way. So now I'm going to solve the problem 2 ways again. One way with the plus. So I'm going to have 11 plus 1 over 6. That's going to be one way. The other way is going to be 11 minus 1 over 6. So I know 11 plus 1 is 12 over 6. And 12 divided by 6 is going to give you a 2. 11 minus 1 is a 10 over 6, which when I type that in the calculator, I get 5/3. So your final answer, x is going to be a 2 and a 5/3. Okay? Not too bad. Now if we scroll down to our next problem, our first step is going to be really similar. I need to type in all of those numbers with their parentheses into my calculator, but make sure you don't do the square root button. So parentheses negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4, and I got 20. So what's under this radical is going to be a 20. So then I'm going to bring down everything. We can kind of take a shortcut right here, and I know 2 negatives will give you a positive. So I can go ahead and make that a positive 6 plus or a minus all over 2 times 1 is a 2. So the next thing I have to do, I know square root of 20 is not a perfect square. So I'm going to need to break it down. So let me scroll down. Square root of 20 is going to break down into 4 times 5. So 2 times 2 times 5. I have a pair of 2's. So my final answer is going to be 2 root 5. So that's going to go in place of my 20. So I'm going to rewrite it over here with a 6 plus or minus, and that is now a 2 root 5 all over 2. So all I did was I took this 20, I broke it down, and I put it right in place over it. My last step is to reduce these whole numbers out here. I know I see a 2 and a 2 and a 6, so I know they're divisible by a 2. So let me divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. And I am left with 6 divided by 2 is a 3. Plus or minus, that's a 1 root 5. And then on bottom is a 1. Now we don't really need these 1s here. They're like placeholders. So I can also write this as 3 plus or minus root 5. And then over 1 is that same thing. So this is actually the simplified version of this. So if it's divided by 1, we don't need to write it. And if you've got a 1 in front of that radical, it's kind of assumed there's a 1 right there. Okay? Last problem. Alright, so first step is the same step. I'm going to go ahead and type all of these under my radical. So 6 squared minus 4 times 2 times 3. And I got 12. So that's going to be the square root of a 12. Bring down plus or minus. And then this negative 6 would just be a negative 6. And that is all over 2 times 2, which is a 4. My next step, I know that square root of 12 is not a perfect square, so I need to break it down. And I will do that over here. This is just like the last one. So 4 times 3, which is 2 times 2 times 3. That's under my square root. Take out a pair of 2's, and I have 2 root 3. So I'm going to put that back up there where that square root of 12 was, and I would get negative 6 plus or minus square root, nope, now 2 root 3, all over that 4. Same thing, I need to reduce these fractions out here. I know they're all divisible by 2, so I'm going to divide all these numbers by a 2. And my final answer would be negative 3 plus or minus 1 root 3 over 2. Now I can simplify this further because I really don't need that 1 as a placeholder. So I'm going to write it as negative 3 plus or minus square root 3 over 2. Okay? So I've got 2 answers, and I've left them all simplified into radical form, and I forgot my x. And that is the quadratic formula.